Hello there, and welcome everybody. If you can hear me, say hi on the comment box, please. And greetings from now sunny Coruña. I see you getting inside. Let's give it a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes for everybody to get settled in, get comfortable, and then we'll start this virtual guided tour. Welcome everybody. Hello Dan. Hi Blanca. Well, from Canada, Toronto. Nice. You're looking forward to visit Canada someday. I'm from Rotterdam. Thanks. I enjoyed my visit to the Netherlands as well very much. I love your country. Well, as I said, let's give a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes before 6 o'clock here local time to start. Get everybody sitting comfortable. Um, if you can leave a comment on the box saying where are you watching us from. That's very useful information for us because we do statistics like there. So it would be great to know where are you listening from. Well, see, we have now 45 people inside. Great. Welcome to this first virtual guided tour in English here at Turismo da Coruña. During lockdown, we have been offering the chance of discovering our tourism and cultural resources through this live video feed here on Facebook. Last week, we did a tour about the Camino de Santiago, about the English way specifically, and it was a great success. So many of you manifested an interest about an English version of the tour, so here we are. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Manu Sanchez. I'm an official Galicia tour guide, and I have been working for Coruña Tourist Board for 8 years now. And this is my first virtual tour in English, so it's great experience for me. I apologize in advance for my English. It's a little rusty. I haven't had the chance to practice lately during lockdown. I have a few friends abroad, but haven't had the chance to talk with them much. So I apologize if I make any mistakes during this video feed. I see people from Budapest, nice. Madrid, Ireland, nice, very nice. Thanks for accompanying us during this live tour. Well, I'm going to explain a bit about how this is going to work. I'm going to be using Google Maps mainly to, well, try to replicate what an actual guided tour would look like in reality. And I'm going to be using multimedia sources as well, like pictures and videos, to show you the relation between the pilgrimage itself and our cultural resources here in the city of A Coruña. So, as I said before, I'm official tour guide here in Galicia. I work for A Coruña Tourist Board, and usually I work in the Tower of Hercules, which is our lighthouse, our very famous lighthouse here of the city. It's the only Roman lighthouse that still works, that is still in operation. And I usually work there, but on the side, I also do tours around the city. And these are very special tours because we get to dress up as characters from the history of the city. I'm going to show you now in a few minutes. Let's just get everybody inside comfortably. I'll just give it a minute and then I'll start. Hi, Isabel. Nice to see you listening from Ireland. Another one. I see a few acquaintances and some friends as well. Nice to have you here with us. And thanks, Sally, for the compliment. And I'll try to do my best, but I might do some grammatical errors along the way. You'll have to forgive me. Well, it's 6 o'clock now, so I'm thinking we should start. Again, welcome to this first virtual guided tour in English. We're going to be exploring mainly the old city of A Coruña, its cultural resources, and also the relation between the maritime pilgrimage back in the day in the Middle Ages and our buildings, our history. So, I told you before, I work as a tour guide, and here you can see me impersonating one of the characters that we play at Turismo da Coruña. We do reenactment tours. This is fairly regular, I think, in the UK. That's where I saw it first, but they do it all around the world, I think, now. And here I am playing the role of William Way, which was a British pilgrim that came here to the city of A Coruña during the holy year of 1456 and wrote a book called The Itineraries of William Way. And it's a very valid testimony for us because it shows, it lets us know how the city was during the 15th century. He even says the people who he talked with, what he did in our city, what the city looked like. So this is a very useful testimony, is a very useful witnessing what the city would have looked like in the 15th century. So we try to impersonate this character and act and talk like him would do it in reality back in 1456. This was my one of the sources of information when I prepared the tour and this presentation, but my main source of information is this book, this guidebook right here, which is called A Coruña, the Port of the Way of St. James. And this is a brochure that we have available on our website. So my colleague Alberto should be posting right now in the comment box a link for you to download this guide on PDF format. I highly recommend that you read this guide after the visit because I'm not going to be able to explore all the accounts, all the buildings, all the histories behind the Camino Inglés, the English way. I'm not going to be able to tell you everything, but you can expand your knowledge. You can complete the tour reading this guide, with which I can assure you it's a very interesting read. And this guide was done. It was written by a local man called Manuel Rodriguez, who works for Xacobeo. Xacobeo is the regional entity that promotes all the Caminos de Santiago, all the stretches of the Camino de Santiago, both locally and internationally. So we commissioned him a few years back to do a little research and investigation about the Camino Inglés, the English way, and this was the result. He wrote for us this very specific and detailed guide that I highly recommend that you read after the visit. As I said, you can download it from our website. I'm seeing now Alberto is posting the link for you to download the guide. So I thought of no better way to introduce the theme, to talk about the Camino Inglés, that to invite Manolo himself, Manuel Rodriguez, to talk a little bit about the Camino Inglés, the English way, and its relevance throughout the centuries. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to invite him to be live today, but I have a short video I'm going to play for you now of Manuel talking about the Camino Inglés. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the video right now. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's go.
Hola peregrinos, hola peregrinas. Simplemente deciros algo muy breve, pero muy contundente. Hacer el camino de Santiago desde A Coruña, o sea, hacer el camino inglés en este tramo terrestre entre la ciudad de A Coruña y Santiago es hacer un itinerario cargado de historia, cargado de los pasos del pasado, cargado de experiencias, cargado de búsqueda y cargado también de emoción. Y diréis por qué en un itinerario tan breve, porque A Coruña fue el gran puerto histórico de peregrinos Entre los siglos XIII y XVI, sobre todo, llegaron miles y miles de peregrinos a la ciudad de A Coruña, que era el gran puerto de referencia de toda España de llegada de peregrinos para dirigirse a Santiago. Eran peregrinos que proceden, está estudiado en esos países además, peregrinos que procedían de Inglaterra, de los puertos del sur de Inglaterra, de Irlanda, de Alemania, Dinamarca, Suecia, Noruega, en fin, Polonia, los Países Bajos, de los puertos, de gran número de puertos franceses, y su destino siempre era esta maravillosa ciudad que merece, por tanto, que sigáis las huellas por A Coruña de los peregrinos históricos. Están por todas partes sobre la zona, sobre todo la zona más próxima al puerto, y es una experiencia maravillosa.
Well, that was my namesake. That was Manuel talking about the historical pilgrimage routes by sea from different European ports to A Coruña. Obviously, it all starts with the discovery of the burial site of the apostle back at the ninth century, and the first maritime pilgrimages started in the 10th century, but it was until the 13th, 14th centuries, with implementation and improvements being made in navigation systems, that the English way took its heyday, arrived to its heyday. Obviously, the social political environment helped as well, because in between the 14th and 15th centuries, the Hundred Years' War was occurring. So it was a lot safer to navigate in a boat than to cross all over Europe walking. Obviously, the name of the Camino, of the way, is the English way, because many of the pilgrims came from the British ports, from the south of the British Isles, especially. But you can see there were pilgrims also from places as far as Iceland, Norway, Sweden, all around Europe, really. So we have many different nationalities, many different cultures coming into our little city. And this was a trip that it wasn't really comfortable. It was not a piece of cake. It was really rough. There's a point from the 15th century, which is anonymous, but it's called The Pilgrim's Sea Voyage and Sea Sickness. And it says literally, and I quote, "Those who embark to Santiago de Compostela renounce all pleasures," because it was really crowded in those boats, first of all. Uh, Apart from that, uh, normally the pilgrims were experiencing some kind of discomfort and seasickness. They were really dizzy during navigation, so they couldn't barely eat, to be honest, and there were no cooking facilities also. So it was a really rough way of traveling. And also there was as well the menace, the threat of invasion by pirates. So tradition has it that they used to held masses inside of the boat, at least 2 or 3 masses per day, in order to ask for the protection of both the Virgin and Saint James. These were trips that were sanctioned by the crown. For example, in the British Isles, they needed, the patrons of the boats needed letters of safe conduct that were issued directly by the English crown. And we know, for example, that in the year 1434, a number of 2,000 pilgrims arrived into the port of La Coruña. But I'm pretty sure that there were many secret trips, illegal trips, or boats using the same letters of safe conduct all over and over again. So the figures might be far greater than the records show. We have these records here in A Coruña showing 2,000 pilgrims, but I'm sure that the number was far greater. These were also commercial trips, because they seized the opportunity to bring with them items that they could exchange once they arrive into the Corunian port. For example, in the case of the British pilgrims, they used to carry with them pieces of clothing that they would exchange for local wines, for Galician wines. I think they got the long end of the stick there. I would prefer the wine instead of the clothing. Of course, lots and lots of British vessels hence the name. And William West says it in his itineraries, in his notebook, in his guidebook, says that as far as 83 ships were docked in the port of La Coruña that day when he arrives. So this is what Coruña would have looked like more or less in the 16th century. We have a very little small city, no more than 2,000 inhabitants at the time, divided into two different sectors or two different parts. We have the Tower of Hercules far apart, very far away of the city, regulating all the all the trips, all the incursions into our bay, and then two different places. We have the old city, which was also surrounded by walls, on the left-hand side here, and on your right-hand side we would find what we call pescaderia, which is Spanish or Galician for fishermen's quarter, which was the most powerful guild back at the time throughout the Middle Ages, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. They were very powerful and resourceful. And we can mark the invasion of Drake in the year 1589 as the end of the heyday of the success of the maritime pilgrimage, because the relations between the Spanish and the English crown were broken at that time. What about the Camino Inglés, the English way, today? Well, this is a map that you can find in our brochure as well, featuring all the landmarks, all the points of interest related to the Camino Inglés, to the English way. I'm going to be focusing on the ones that are actually near to the port. As I said, I can't cover all the information, and as far as technology allows, I'm going to be strolling around the old city of A Coruña. But I would like to start with number one, which is the Tower of Hercules. Well, this is the way nowadays. As you can see, it's a short way really, because it's 75 kilometers in total. So we have a little problem there, because as you may already know, you need at least 100 kilometers to be able to be granted the Compostela, that certificate that shows that you actually have walked the Camino. And this is only 75 kilometers long. So what we did was the Coruña Tourist Board, working alongside with the deacon of the Cathedral of St. James of Santiago de Compostela, they reached an agreement. So this is a 75-kilometer long stretch. So neighbors living in the city of A Coruña and the surrounding areas are granted the Compostela, even if they don't complete the 100-kilometer stretch. But if you live abroad, you can actually walk the remaining 25 kilometers back home, and then get your stamps, and then travel into Coruña and complete the route, walking the remaining 75 kilometers. And this is quite good for us, but it's also, I think, a little poetic, because it is the same thing that they did back in the day. Most of the pilgrims didn't have direct access to the boats or to a port, so they have to walk all over to a place of embarkation. They have to wait for the ships to come in. They have to wait for the weather to be nice as well, and then only then come here to A Coruña, disembark in A Coruña, and continue walking into Santiago de Compostela. So it's like a way of continuing that ancient tradition that dates back to the Middle Ages. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to be focusing first of all here in the Tower of Hercules. It is not really on the actual route itself, but I think it's worth mentioning. Well worth mentioning. Here we go. The city was known, Coruña, as Farum, in Latin, faro, which means lighthouse in Spanish, at the time, because little they know, the pilgrims, about our city or about our history, but they knew that in this coast we feature an spectacular lighthouse that overlook the Atlantic Ocean. As I said, the lighthouse is not on the route per se, but it was the first vision of the pilgrims arriving to our city. So for them, it meant motion, it meant hope, it meant that they were on the right track to reach their destination. They say that the people at sea used to lower one of the sails as a sign of respect towards this building, as a sign of respect for the Tower of Hercules, which is no doubt our most precious monument and the local icon. It is like that because what you can see outside is the result of a 18th century restoration, but inside we preserve at least 60% of the original construction. What you're seeing right now belongs to the Roman works. So we actually have the oldest functioning lighthouse in the world, and they said it was even inspired in the lighthouse of Alexandria, the most famous by far in overall the world. So it has always been the Tower of Hercules or Mount's characteristic icon. And in the city coat of arms, this one here is from the 17th century, is always in the middle, but always surrounded by scallop shells. So I think the pilgrimages were fairly important to them as well. Okay, I'm not going to skip to Google Maps to be able to stroll around the city of A Coruña. This is the neuralgic center of the city. This is called La Marina. And here you can see these beautiful wood and glass buildings that we call the galerías, that allows light to enter into the homes, to be warm in winter and to be cool at summer. The city is known as the City of Glass by this film, no? Because we feature this collection of wood and glass buildings. Well, the configuration of the city and of the port has changed dramatically. It's obviously not the same that William West sees on 1456, but he talks about how he saw docked here at the port 84 ships, 32 of them being English, carried the spectacular number of at least 5,000 pilgrims. I think he was exaggerating a little bit because our port is not that big, but it gives us an idea about how big the pilgrimage were in the 15th century. He also mentions, and this is curious, how the local children used to gather together someplace around here at the port and had even learned the song in Latin in order to ask for alms, to ask for money to the pilgrims that were arriving into the port. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is to use Google Maps to stroll around the old city of Coruña. The system is trolling me a little bit. I'm gonna do it slowly. And this is our first stop because we're reaching the Church of Santiago, Church of St. James, which was even closer to the sea, as you can see today. It was just next door to the sea. And this was, no doubt, the first point that the pilgrims came to because they wanted to thank the apostle for his safe arrival to the port. We're talking about a Gothic church with Romanesque elements from the 13th to 14th centuries, but dating back to the 10th century, possibly being the oldest church in town. It used to be the place of gathering for the local town council and the neighbors. They used to meet here at the atrium of the church and play politics on the street. They talk about the problems of the city and talk about how to resolve them. Can you imagine doing that right now? Well, I'm not going to be focusing on the history about the church, but focusing on the elements, the Jacobean element of the church. So zooming in a little, you can see here in the main entrance, the main door, that we have Saint James dressed as a knight and riding his horse, and two figures at the sides of the main door. I'm going to be using now a picture to show you better. This is the main door. Here you can see Santiago as a knight, and the two figures, the one on the right is a very young John the Apostle, and in front of him we have Saint James the Great, which is represented uh, in his senectitude, in his old days. with a book upon his head, with a walking stick, and he's also standing on a lion. So I think the idea here is represent Saint James as a figure of knowledge, as a figure of wisdom. If we went inside the church, you would see this is a very beautiful church. In the main altarpiece, we have another three representations of Saint James of Santiago, but I'm going to be focusing now on the arches here of the columns, of the capitals of the columns, where you can see that carved into the stone we have scallop shells and geometric designs that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, could represent the pilgrim staff. The pilgrim staff, it is said on the Codex Callistinus in the Liber Sancti Jacobi, that is the third feet of the pilgrims. So it has also a poetic meaning. But maybe the most astonishing element of this church, when you enter, if you look into your right hand side, you will find this stone sculpture of Saint James, which dates back to the 15th century. It even preserves some of the original color, which is amazing in my opinion. And pilgrims, in the same fashion as they now do in the Cathedral of Santiago, used to go behind this little statue, climb up a little staircase, and hug this image because they wanted to pay their respects, they wanted to thank the apostle for its safe arrival, and ask for protection alongside the way. So this is a very interesting piece that we preserve inside the Church of Santiago here in A Coruña. Coming back to Google Maps, I'm going to be leaving behind the Church of Santiago and arriving to this area here that we call the Parrote, which was the old port. What you see here, it is now a five-star hotel, sports complex, but in the old days, water used to reach the old city walls. So what you see in here are the remains of this part here. These are the remains of the old city walls. And there was a beach here called Playa del Parrote, beach of the Parrote. And well, once the big ships arrive into the port, there's a small island, more or less around here, that is called the Isla dos Corvos, in English, Island of the Crows. And theoretically, the pilgrimage was protected by the local authorities and the church. If the vessels were inside the marks of what was just considered the port of A Coruña, the marks marked by this Island of the Crows, the local authorities, the town hall, and the church protected those ships. So if anything happened to them, they would be responsible, they would act accordingly and not allow any offenses. So it is interesting what we see here. This is a door. It's called Puerta del Parrote, the door of the Parrote. And I'm going to be using now another picture to show you. As you can see, I'm not lying. There used to be a beach right there, which is a shame. And this is the old city gate of the Parrote. This is one of the doors with the more significance from that time because it was witness, it bear witness to a lot of famous pilgrimages. I think that one of the most relevant is the one of John of Gaunt, the Duke of Lancaster, back in 1386. But he saw many, many pilgrims climbing into the city through its gate. This door right here dates back to the 17th century, but it was a substitute for another that was already present in the 14th century. So this is one of the elements with the most significance for us because it was just resembling witness to many, many pilgrims back in the day. We continue walking through here. We're going to be arriving to this stretch of walls that I think is one of the best preserved remains of the old city walls back from the time. There might be some parts here that date back to the 14th century. The building that you can see inside the city walls is the Royal Archive of the Kingdom of La Coruña. And here, this door is clearly out of context. It belongs, it is from someplace else. It doesn't belong here, but it was put here as a monumental entrance to this fine institution. So using again um, a photograph, I'm going to show you. This used to be the main door for the hospital of St. Andrew. Hospitals were a very important part of the pilgrim business. There were three main hospitals here in the city, being the one of St. Andrew the most important. The influx of pilgrims was that large that in the year 1502 there were even talks about building a great hospital in the style of the Hostal de los Reyes Católicos from Santiago de Compostela, which is in the Obradoiro Square. The local councillor at the time, named Pedro de Montoto, said, and I quote, that there are usually more than 1,000 poor pilgrims that the city fails to accommodate. So even with three hospitals in the city, there were more than 1,000 wandering the streets searching for accommodation. There's just a few elements of the Church of St. Andrew left because it was demolished and reconstructed in the 19th century, but we did preserve two elements. I'm going to show you now. This is one of them. This is the current church of St. Andrew, which is, as I said, from the late years of the 19th century. But this stone cross here, at first time, it's actually from the original church, from the original church and hospital of St. Andrew. And it's very, very interesting because in its shaft, I'm going to be zooming in a little so you can see right there. It's interesting because it has the representation carved into the stone of 5 walking sticks into the shaft, carved into the shaft. And this is a fairly unique image in a stone cross. The stick of a pilgrim, as I said before, is named in the Codex Callistinus as the 3rd feet of the pilgrim, but this is a very rare representation in a crucero. I don't know many cruceros that feature this kind of representation, and even in the churches and so on, we don't get to see many representations of the walking stick. So this is a very interesting and unique image to find here in A Coruña. Coming back to the door, as I said, this was the main entrance of the church and the hospital itself. It was disassembled and brought here to be the monumental entrance of the Royal Archive of Galicia. And I'm going to be focusing on the archivolts here. I'm going to zoom in as well. Let me just zoom in a little so you can see better. Because we have 3 archivolts, and starting from the top, we have the representation of fishes. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but alongside here, fishes are carved into the stone. And I don't think it's any fish. I think these are sardines on top. Because the sardines were our main export during the Middle Ages, and especially since the 12th century, we used to manufacture loads and loads of barrels of sardine to send into another countries. So below the sardines, we have 2 elements. This here might be a scallop shell again, and below the scallop shell, you would find a cross that is representing the martyrdom of Saint Andrew. As you know, Saint Andrew was tormented as Jesus Christ, but in a cross shaped like an X. So this is the representation of the martyrdom of Saint Andrew. That's the reason why the flag of Scotland, which patron saint is Saint Andrew, it's something like this. And look, it is very curious because the flag of the maritime province of A Coruña is this one. So fairly identical, and it gives us an idea about the relation between the 2 countries. So the last element here in the archivolts would be well, thinking Christ in the middle, and then some of the figurines here that look like they're praying somewhat. So, in my opinion, these are Franciscan monks because they were the ones in charge of taking care of the pilgrims once they reach, once they were accommodated into the local hospital. All right, moving on now. I'm gonna come back to Google Maps to continue our tour throughout the old city of Coruña. Hope you are enjoying it. Of course, you can ask whatever you like in the comment box. It might get me, I might get the questions with a little bit of delay, but if I don't address them during the visit, I will be checking the feed later today and tomorrow to answer your questions as well as I can. So we are now in front of the San Carlos Garden, which hosts the burial site of Sergio Moore. This is not directly linked with the pilgrimage, but it's curious somehow. I'm going to show you a picture. John Moore was a brigadier general that in the year 1809 helped us defend the city against the Napoleonic troops. So he fell in combat, and since then he's been buried here at the San Carlos Garden. So it's just a footnote, just an idea that it's destiny is tricky sometimes because we were very friends. We're very, friends during the 14th, the 15th, even the 16th centuries. Then we went on to war, the Brits and the Spanish. Then we were friends again back in the 19th century. Destiny is capricious sometimes. So anyway, legend has it that every 16th of January, that is the day that John Moore died, the ghost of his lover, Lady Hester of Stanhope, appears in this garden to visit his darling Sergio Moore. So you might need to check that. Come here 16th of January and we'll see. Okay, leaving behind San Carlos Garden, I'm going to be entering again the old city of Coruña, if Google wants to. No, doesn't want to. Gonna be trying again now. Okay, on the right track now. And it doesn't let me go any further than this, so I'm gonna circle back. This happens on live feeds. Here we go. We will reach this square here, which is called Santo Domingo Square, which hosts the Dominican Church nowadays. This church used to be outside the city walls, but it was destroyed by Francis Drake invasion back in 1589. So they later rebuilt the church inside of the city walls, and this is the result. It's a Baroque style church that reminds us of many of the buildings that we can find in Santiago de Compostela. And it says, William Way says in his book, that pilgrims also took the time to visit the mendicant orders, who, as I already have said, were heavily involved in the care and attention both to pilgrims and the sick. This church is important for us because it hosts the image of the patron saint of the city, which is the Virgin of the Rosary. And next to the church, we'll find this building that nowadays belongs to the national government, I think. But back in the day, it used to be the mint. So here's the idea. If we have a city, a fairly small city that is receiving pilgrimages and ships from all over Europe, and it hosts many different people, many different nationalities, many different languages as well, it is important to have an entity that allows to facilitate transactions and to facilitate exchanges of currency even during the time. So in the mint, there were coins produced, obviously, as well. And those coins normally had two images. It could be an image of the Tower of Hercules, obviously, it's our icon. But the other icon used to imprint into the coins was the scallop shell. So again, the pilgrimage having a protagonist role in the life of the city. Let's see if Google helps me now to reach my next point, which is called the Plaza de las Bárbaras. These are Franciscan cloister nuns that are here in a little convent that are also involved in the hospitalary tradition. If you don't want rain on your wedding date, you should definitely bring a box of gifts to them, and they're going to make some desserts with them. Interesting here in this little convent is the high relief that we would find here in the front porch before entering the church itself. I'm going to show you here. This is the high relief, and this is an image representing the Last Judgment. So we have here the cross at the top, death below, and in the image, the Last Judgment. So on the left-hand side, Saint Michael is weighing the souls, seeing who's fit to enter into paradise. At the right, we have Saint Francis. You can see perfectly here the habits and the cords, preaching to a little Franciscan, and in the middle, next to God and Jesus Christ, and next to the moon and the sun, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, next to everything, we have Saint James, which is accompanying what it seems to be a last soul. He's showing him or her the right way. All right, we're reaching now the end of our tour, but there's still some things of interest here. This little cobbled street here is called Calle de la Sinagoga, Synagogue Street. And back in 1391, the Dominican preacher Fernán Gómez was preaching against the Jewish community. But it was the mid-15th century here, and William West said so in his tale, in his journeys, that he was fairly surprised that in the mid-15th century, the Jewish community wasn't expelled from Galicia yet. They have a massive presence and influence in the city, and they were very wealthy. They were doing okay. I'm guessing the trend arrived later to the north of the peninsula, and they end up expelled as well. But what is interesting about the synagogue street that today it's only the name. We don't have a synagogue in A Coruña, but here used to live a guy named Moises Sabara, which was a Jewish Coruñan inhabitant at the time that wanted to buy the Bible of Cervera, which was a very famous Catalan Bible. And the owners of the Bible of Cervera wouldn't sell. So he associated with another guy called Joseph Haim, and in between the two of them fabricated this, which I believe might be maybe one of the most important manuscripts of the Middle Ages here in Galicia. This is the so-called Kennicott Bible, and it was bought by the priest Benjamin Kennicott, and when he died, he left the Bible in charge of the Bodleian Library in Oxford. So it's been there since the year 1872. There was an exhibition recently here at Santiago de Compostela that featured this particular item. We were able to bring it back for a few months to be able to showcase it to the visitors. I think this was one of the main items, one of the most important items of that exhibition. All right, so we're reaching now the final point of this virtual journey. I hope you have been enjoying it. And this is the Church of Saint Mary. Two names for this church. It can be Saint Mary of the Land, because it used to be outside the city walls and then was engulfed into the inner part of the city, and Saint Mary of the Sea, because this was the church that the people at sea came before getting into the ships and going out to sea. They asked the Virgin for protection. Interesting things about this church. First of all, the lateral facade here, it's oriented to the south, and in the tympanum we have a very curious image. It's this one here. There you go. And this is unknown. There's no really, we don't know for sure what this is representing, but there are a few theories. And in my opinion, we have the five barefoot figures and the central one carrying a towel. So, in my opinion, this might be a representation of Santiago preaching at the end of the world. As you know, well, this part of the world was considered to be the end of the world, not until that long ago. So, Santiago preaching here was to preach as far away as anyone could, and that was one of the reasons that his disciples brought the body back here to Galicia. Finally, I'm gonna be walking alongside the church to show you the main facade. Here we go. This is a beautiful image of a church which is dating back to the 13th and 14th centuries, competing with the Santiago Church also to be the oldest in town, but also competing to attract the pilgrims. This was a collegiate church since the 1441, because Compostela's bishop at the time said that St. Mary of the Land received the visit of a lot of foreigners. So there you go. Before walking to Santiago de Compostela, they used to spend some days in our city visiting all the attractions, hearing mass, interacting with people, doing all kinds of stuff. So this is the final point of our visit, but I'm going to show you now other thing completely unrelated to this. Voila. And you might be wondering why I'm showing you a picture of a sculpture of John Lennon. The story is this. John Lennon wanted to do the Camino alongside Salvador Dali. They talked about it in the 70s, but they never got around to doing it. So in the old days, you could do the walk on your name, but also in the name of others. And this is what happened precisely here, because a few years back, John's sister, Julia Bird, did the Camino Inglés, the English way, honoring the memory of his brother John. I couldn't get Julia to be live today, but I also have a video of her talking about the experience, talking about the English way, talking about all the sensations that came into her mind when doing the Camino. So I'm going to put the video right now so you can see it. There you go.
Hola, once again, all the people of A Coruña in Galicia and all the people in Spain and the wider diaspora, not only of Spanish-speaking people, but people who speak any language, because here we are talking about something really, really special. Now, I've already made one of these little videos talking about the actual walk itself and why we did it, and with the Real Orden de Maria Pita and the cathedral. And now I'd just like to say a little bit about the sort of feelings, the sensations, if you like, that we all had on that walk. We had feelings individually as we're walking along, and we had feelings started to come together as a group. And that is absolutely amazing. That I've seen films about El Camino. In fact, I watched one last night called The Way with Martin Sheen, and they did the San Juan coming from France. And I was recognising it, that you start off completely on your own and you end up gelling with people, making friendships with people, but you're still able to keep your own head, your own thinking, and talk to people as and when it suits both of you. But you're very comfortable, you become very comfortable walking for long stretches through beautiful forests, over fields, up hillsides, sitting and eating together in a very, very companionable silence, or talking, maybe about the Camino, maybe about what has brought you there. So the actual feelings became more intense, because the initial feelings, of course, with ordinary people like me, like any pilgrim, unless you are a long-distance runner or you're jogging 10 miles a night, is physical aches and pains. So, it takes you a bit to get through that. And we have a local beautiful place that is extremely steep, the highest location in our area. And for 3 weeks before we came on the Camino, I was there at the crack of dawn every day, shortening the time, and shortening the time to go up right over the top and come down. And I started already to get rid of, to dissipate that physical angst and to move into a very peaceful space. Now, when we went on the Camino, I felt that peaceful space almost straight away. And you're able to, I call it monkey mind, a lot of people do. You're able to sort out your monkey mind and put it away. My partner and I have spent time in India. We've walked in the Himalayas. At one point, we walked 3 weeks vertically up to the drip, drip, drip start of a glacier, the Pindori Glacier, the most strenuous and wonderful thing. I don't think I'll ever surpass that, right in the Himalayas. But by the end of that 3 weeks, I didn't know I had legs. I was walking in very difficult circumstances. It was just Roger and I together. We joined a group every now and again, but stayed on our own mainly. And it was my head that had taken over. The peace inside my head was astounding. And I was beginning to feel that peace on this Camino Inglés. And because of that feeling, this is why Carolina and I and many of the other group, if they can make it, we want to do a longer walk. We want to go from Vigo now back to A Coruña, and maybe we'll go on to the sea bit and do the whole thing properly. And then, having watched that film, I'm thinking, well, why don't we walk from France? Not quite Paris, but why don't we walk right through the Himalayas? So hopefully by this time next year, if the virus situation allows it, we will be able to have already completed the Vigo walk and just be hungry for more, because that's what walks like the Camino do. They leave you hungry for more. So I hope this is okay. You'll have to edit it down. And hello to everybody in Spain, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
So there you go. That was Julia Bird, John Lennon's sister, talking about her experience in the Camino Inglés, her English way. And she mentions in this testimony a specific person, which is Carolina Rubirosa, which is the author, the lead singer of the official theme of the official promotional song of the Camino Inglés, the English way, and I have her right here with me. Hello, Carolina.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for joining us during this live feed about the Camino Inglés. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for joining us during today and ask you, how did you come up with the idea of doing a song, a video that could be used as a promotional tool for the English way?
Well, thanks for having me. The idea came out, you explained very well about the story we found out this peculiar story a few years ago about Dali doing the Camino with John Lennon, because Dali was a very lover, you can say lover about the Camino. And he planned to do the Camino in many occasions, but unfortunately they never done it. But he planned seriously to do the Camino with Lennon and a group of hippies. You can imagine the scene walking to Santiago de Compostela. So we thought, as a Beatlemaniac, I am a Beatles lover, and I love Galicia, I love El Camino de Santiago too. And we thought it would be a good idea to propose Julia to do the Camino as an honor or tribute to her brother. she accepted, did the Camino with me, with us, with the Real Orden de Caballeros de María Pita, who personally invited her. And once we finished the Camino, I wrote the song. And I thought that we had all the ingredients to do something different to promote the Camino. I mean, we have a fresh pop new song. We have the story of Dali and Lennon, and we have Julia doing the Camino. So we talked with Lanzada Calatayud from Turismo, and she was excited with the idea, and we started to work on it. It came so natural. I would like to highlight too that this project was absolutely, totally feminine made, because all the people involved in the project were women. First of all, the director, Lara Capeans, was the who maintained us every day with the hard work of shooting the video. She was an amazing job. The impulsor that was Lanzada Calatayud, the other sponsor that was Cecilia Marimon from Jacobeo, and Julia and me, who was starring the...
Especially you, that you sing it so beautifully.
Thank
I
you.
believe this was your first time doing the Camino.
Yes. And for me, it was very surprising because I found out a short way, a short camino, because it's easy to do. I mean, it depends on where you start. You can start from Ferrol or from A Coruña, as you know, but it took you only 3, 4, or 5 days. It depends on your speed of walking, no? But I think it's a very good way to make your first steps in pilgrimage, because for me it has all you need in the Camino. I mean, you have the coast, you have beautiful historical buildings, you have open green fields and spaces, incredible landscapes, deep forest. You have everything, and you have enough time to realize what the Camino is and what is the meaning of the Camino.
I see. So tell me a little bit about the song or the video and its meaning to you. How was this creative process? What were you thinking of? What was the idea behind it? What you wanted to tell the people with this song?
Well, it came so natural for me because I tried to focus on the personal or human side of the Camino. I mean, you can start the walking by many reasons, for religion, for spiritual, from doesn't matter. But once you start the walking, you make a strong connection with the other people walking with you, and you became friends. Even you became friends and partnership. You help each other and receive the other's help. For me, it's so special relationship. I think it's different than any other in the world, and the people who made the Camino knows what I'm talking about. And I tried to talk about this and to communicate the strength of doing the Camino. I mean, because for me, the Camino is like the life. No matter how hard you can find the way, you have to push harder to go forward. And this is for me the meaning of the Camino, is what I experience in my own pilgrimage.
I agree with you completely about the connections that they make en route. I have done the Camino myself a few times, and I completely agree with you. So I can think of no better ending for this virtual live tour than your song. So what I'm gonna do now is to put your video clip inside, and this is a fitting ending, I think, for the visit. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank as well Julia Bell for sending that clip, and of course Manolo Rodriguez from Jacobeo that offered that little insight about the origins of the Camino. And with no further ado, thanking everybody at home for watching us, for accompanying us during this Sunday evening. I hope you enjoyed the tour. Hope you learned something, and we look forward to welcome you here in Galicia, in Coruña, whenever it's possible. So stay safe and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you again, Carolina.
Bye, thank you.
See you soon.
I don't know if you're aware, but my brother was planning to do the walk, or some of the walk, with Salvador Dali, and how good that would have been for music. This is in memory of John.